Welcome to Golden Fortune Leo, where we talk about your life with the same candor a best friend uses at brunch and the same rigor a veteran researcher brings to a lab bench. I'm delighted you're here, because today's message is less weather report and more sunrise forecast. November arrives like the first warm light after a storm that dragged on for several acts too many, and you, dignified Leo, step out of the thunder with your mane a little damp but your spirit entirely unextinguished. On November 4th, Mars strides into Sagittarius and strikes a match in the very center of your courage, and if you've been wondering when the universe planned to stop giving you character-building material and start handing you momentum, this is that pivot, the click of gears when a machine finally engages. Think of Mars in Sagittarius as fire meeting fire, but with a graduate seminar attached. It demands not only passion but purpose, not only belief but action. Over the last few months you may have felt your confidence flicker under the crosswinds, finances testing your patience, health requiring stricter stewardship, love asking for honesty more than theatrics, and grief or regret visiting like a late-night rerun you didn't cue. Yet the narrative changes here, not through denial but through design. As an astrologer who's watched cycles long enough to stop being impressed by coincidences, I'll say this plainly: your chart is moving from defense to offense, and every step you take in November lands on firmer ground than you expect. Psychologically, this is the month to retire your habit of over-identifying with setbacks. The brain is an excellent stenographer of pain and a lazy editor of progress, and Mars in a fellow fire sign is the editor-in-chief who insists you publish the wins. Sociologically, you'll notice your circle shift as well. People who thrive on scarcity narratives will suddenly seem dimly lit rooms, while those who practice gratitude and solution-finding feel like windows thrown open after rain. A touch of Buddhist common sense helps here. Attachment to how things were is precisely what keeps you from meeting how good things are becoming. Let the clinging soften, and you'll find that relief isn't a miracle but a mechanical consequence. If the last chapter asked you to endure, this one invites you to participate, and yes, there is a difference. Endurance is white-knuckled, participation is heart-forward. I'll also add a little Leo-flavored humor for perspective. If life recently felt like you were auditioning for the role of stoic extra number 3 in someone else's melodrama, congratulations, the director just rewrote the script and gave you top billing again, but now the lines are sharper, the lighting kinder, and the wardrobe budget finally respects your taste. We'll spend today unpacking what this transit means in real terms, how to translate bravery into boundaries, enthusiasm into scheduling, and vision into revenue, because faith without follow-through is just mood lighting. Expect a clean audit of your habits, too. Mars Sag loves honesty the way lions love sunlight, and it will highlight where your time leaks, where your body needs steadier rhythms, and where your generosity must stop subsidizing other people's avoidance. Spiritually, consider this a season of right effort, not frantic pushing, but consistent alignment, not trying to be invincible, but choosing to be available to the best outcome, something any wise novelist would recognize as the moment the protagonist stops running from the plot and starts steering it. Some of you will feel a flash of recognition reading this, the exact instant you admit that the old story about being too late, too tired, too unlucky isn't a prophecy but a superstition that lost its bite. In that admission, power returns. And because we're Leos, let's honor the theater of it all. There's nothing wrong with enjoying the comeback, as long as you remember it wasn't fate that saved you but focus that revealed you. Today's episode will guide you through practical moves for November. In every Leo season, there comes a moment when the universe decides to hand you a mirror instead of a medal. November 2025 is that mirror moment, and strangely enough, the messenger carrying it is a frog. Before you roll your eyes, let's pause to appreciate how oddly poetic that is. The frog is not exactly the king of the jungle, no mane, no roar, but it is a master of metamorphosis. It begins its life breathing underwater, and somewhere along the way, it learns to leap into the air, That is the journey you're on, Leo, from the emotional depths that once kept you submerged to a higher, freer realm where you can finally breathe again. The frog doesn't evolve by force, it does so because nature demands it, and this month, nature is demanding that you shed an old skin. The process will feel uncomfortable, like wearing clothes 2 sizes too small, but discomfort is sacred when it signals rebirth. Maybe you've been holding on to something, a person, a pattern, or even a self-image that once brought comfort but now feels like a cage. The paradox is simple: the tighter you hold, the smaller you feel. True release doesn't leave you empty, it makes you available for new beginnings, for genuine peace, for love that doesn't come with exhaustion as a side effect. Letting go isn't loss, it's alignment. It's trading heavy luggage for wings. Once you start that process, you enter the terrain of the 3 of Pentacles, the Architect's card. This is where your story stops being a solo performance and becomes a collaboration. The cosmos reminds you that even a lion needs a pride. For too long, independence may have been your badge of honor, but self-reliance isn't the same as isolation. You're beginning to recognize that strength can coexist with support and that partnership doesn't dilute your fire, it amplifies it. Psychologically speaking, this is what social scientists call healthy interdependence, where trust replaces control and cooperation replaces competition. If you're building a business, launching a project, or simply reimagining your future, this energy wants you to structure it, get the blueprint out of your head and into reality. Schedule the thing. Make the call. Write the first draft. The illusion of perfect timing has already stolen enough of your courage. The moment you start, the universe synchronizes around your intention. And when the right people arrive, the ones who add oxygen to your vision instead of siphoning it, you'll recognize them instantly. They won't feel dramatic, they'll feel steady. That's how you know it's real. But then comes the lesson of the 4 of Pentacles, and this one is trickier because it hides behind logic. It's the card of control, the psychological fortress we build when we've been burned before. Somewhere along your journey, Leo, you decided that safety meant holding tight, to money, to a relationship, to the image of success. Yet, in clinging to it, you stopped the flow of life. It's a paradox that even seasoned therapists nod at. Knowingly, what we clutch out of fear of loss is often what we end up losing. The cosmos, much like a patient teacher, is now challenging that belief. The truth is, nothing real can ever be lost. If it's truly meant for you, it doesn't require a chokehold to stay. What you've been gripping so tightly, perhaps a narrative about who you must be to survive, might actually be blocking the very abundance you crave. Spirit whispers a deceptively simple message: loosen your grip, you're safe. Abundance behaves like water, it avoids clenched fists. The moment you open your hands, it returns, often tenfold. And perhaps that's the true test of faith, not believing you'll get what you want, but trusting you'll still be whole even if you don't. Of course, transformation wouldn't be complete without a little existential nostalgia, and that's where the 5 of Cups wanders in, dripping melancholy like an old friend who won't stop playing breakup songs. It's the card of regret, the one that makes you replay old conversations in your head, the could-haves and should-haves, the if only I'd known better. But if only is the language of paralysis, not progress. You can't edit the past, but you can revise your relationship with it. Every heartbreak sculpted your emotional intelligence, every failure expanded your empathy. The very moments you wish you could delete are the ones that gave you your depth, and that, ironically, is what makes you magnetic now. As a longtime observer of human behavior, I can tell you that people rarely admire perfection, they admire those who fell, got up, and laughed about it on the way. The chosen ones, as spiritual teachers like to say, don't escape pain, they alchemize it. They turn wounds into wisdom and bruises into boundaries. You, Leo, are in that laboratory now, mixing your experiences into something valuable. The grief that once defined you becomes compost for a richer joy. In a broader, societal sense, this reading mirrors what psychologists call post-traumatic growth, the phenomenon where individuals emerge from adversity not just intact but expanded. That's your arc this month, no longer the hero trying to survive the story, but the author rewriting it. The frog's metamorphosis, the builder's patience, the controller's surrender, and the mourner's forgiveness are not random plot lines, they're the 4 acts of your personal evolution. The Buddhist perspective would put it this way: life's purpose is not to avoid suffering but to understand it deeply enough that compassion arises naturally. When you stop resisting your emotions, they stop defining you. They simply move through, like the frog through water, until breathing becomes effortless again. And yes, amid all this spiritual poetry, let's not forget humor. Because if you can't laugh while transforming, you'll end up treating enlightenment like a tax audit. Maybe you've been obsessing over a past mistake like it's your favorite Netflix series, rewatching every episode, analyzing every motive. This month, unsubscribe. The reruns aren't getting better. Or perhaps you've been guarding your heart so tightly that even joy has to knock twice to be let in. Relax. You don't need to stage manage the universe. It already knows its cues. The moment you stop micro-directing destiny, you'll realize life actually improvises beautifully when you let it. So where does this leave you? In motion. In renewal. In that liminal space between what you were and what you're becoming. You are both the frog and the builder, the releaser and the redeemer. Your task isn't to fix the past but to keep leaping forward, trusting that the pond you land in next will be wider, cleaner, and finally ready for who you've become. The discomfort will pass, the lessons will settle, and when you look back, you'll see that every card, every loss, every challenge, every revelation was part of a single narrative, the story of how you learned to live with open hands and an open heart. And that, dear Leo, is not just astrology. That's psychology, spirituality, and a touch of comedy, all agreeing on the same truth: your soul was never meant to stay stagnant, it was meant to leap. Let's talk about the psychology of letting go, Leo, because if there's one thing your sign has perfected, it's holding on with the stubborn grace of a cat that refuses to leave a warm lap. Leos are loyal, and not just the casual "I'll text you when I remember" kind of loyal. You're the kind who will stick around to rebuild something that clearly wants to collapse, the kind who sees potential long after reality has waved the white flag. From a psychological standpoint, that's both your gift and your trap. You love deeply, so you resist endings. You want to fix, to redeem, to prove that love can outshine entropy. But here's the inconvenient truth: sometimes, love becomes self-sacrifice in disguise. Loyalty is noble until it becomes martyrdom, and the universe doesn't hand out enlightenment points for setting yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. Even Buddha, that calm observer of human chaos, warned that attachment is the root of suffering, not because love is wrong, but because clinging warps love into fear. November is your spiritual pop quiz on that truth. What you cling to starts to own you. What you release returns you to freedom. So when you feel that familiar ache, the temptation to send a nostalgic text to someone you know belongs firmly in your emotional history, the sudden longing for a version of yourself that no longer exists, or the dread of beginning again, pause. Take a deep breath. You are not defined by what you've lost, you are sculpted by what you've learned. Every heartbreak has refined your perception. Every disappointment has stripped away illusion. What remains is not a lesser version of you, it's the distilled one. Sometimes healing is not about adding anything new but about subtracting what no longer serves the story. Now, here's the paradox that even veteran psychologists and philosophers agree on: pain, over time, becomes comfortable. The human mind has an odd attachment to what's familiar, even when it hurts. You've known the ache so intimately that it starts to feel like home. So when genuine happiness finally knocks at the door, it feels suspicious, like a salesman with a too bright smile. That's not intuition, Leo, that's trauma memory wearing the mask of wisdom. It tells you, be careful, joy is temporary, when in truth, it's your defense mechanism afraid of new data. November is your chance to rewrite that internal code. Let the new pattern form. Safety doesn't come from control, it comes from trust. If life suddenly feels lighter, don't push it away as too good to be true. You've earned this ease. You've slogged through emotional winters most people wouldn't survive. You've done the shadow work, stared into the silence, questioned your own motives, wrestled with your reflection until compassion bloomed where self-criticism once lived. So when joy returns, welcome it without suspicion. Don't interrogate the sunlight. Let it stay. Meanwhile, the conversation between your spirit and your body has gotten louder. Astrologically, the Pentacles remind us that material and physical realms mirror spiritual ones. Maybe lately you've felt off, tired without reason, wired for no cause, your hormones rehearsing an opera you never bought tickets to. Before you diagnose yourself with cosmic burnout, understand that transformation often feels like malfunction. Your energy is recalibrating. When the soul upgrades, the body runs updates too. It's inconvenient, yes, but not catastrophic. Think of it as divine software maintenance. That said, the universe doesn't reward neglect. You can't meditate your way out of dehydration or gratitude journal your way around sleep deprivation. Take the walk, stretch your spine. Swap 1 cup of coffee for water occasionally, your adrenal glands are begging for mercy. As a researcher who's seen countless charts, I'll say it plainly, the line between spiritual awakening and nervous exhaustion is thinner than a yoga mat. The middle path, as the Buddha taught, is not poetic, it's practical. Balance is not a reward at the end of the journey, it's the bridge that keeps you from falling off it. Then there's the matter of truth, that slippery concept that seems to have taken a vacation from public life. The cards hint at miscommunication, crossed wires, misunderstandings, or the occasional manipulator testing your patience. It might not be theatrical, but it's draining. Somewhere in your orbit, someone keeps twisting facts into pretzels and then asking you to eat them. Maybe it's a coworker rewriting history, a friend who confuses projection with honesty, or a relative who insists they didn't mean it that way. Either way, this is your cue to stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Lions don't debate with hyenas, they simply rise, shake the dust from their mane, and move on. From a psychological angle, this is boundary work. The need to prove your worth often roots in early conditioning. The child who learned that love was conditional tries to over-explain in adulthood. But you're not that child anymore. You don't have to justify your integrity to anyone. Truth doesn't require witnesses. It vibrates on its own frequency, and everything false eventually disintegrates under its tone. The universe is already handling the audit, your job is to keep your vibration steady. Choosing peace over argument isn't weakness, it's emotional intelligence. In Buddhist teaching, this is equanimity, the ability to stay centered while the world spins itself dizzy. So November becomes your month of quiet mastery. You'll discover that surrender is not defeat, it's efficiency. You'll laugh at how much energy you once spent trying to control what was never yours to manage. You might even find humor in the absurdity of human attachment, how we grip our suffering like it's designer luggage and then complain about the weight. The cosmic joke, Leo, is that you've been free all along, you just forgot to stop dragging the chains you already unlocked. By the time the month ends, you'll feel lighter, not because life suddenly behaves, but because you finally stopped negotiating with pain. You'll notice small miracles, better sleep, spontaneous laughter, conversations that don't spiral into defense. Your body will feel more like an ally than an obstacle. Your heart will expand quietly, no fireworks needed. This is what real growth feels like, not loud, not dramatic, but undeniably peaceful. And when the next challenge arrives, you'll recognize it for what it is, another chance to practice letting go, another opportunity to prove that wisdom is not about controlling outcomes but dancing gracefully with impermanence. That, dear Leo, is where psychology meets spirituality, and where humor keeps both from becoming unbearable. You don't have to fix everything. You just have to stop gripping what's trying to leave and trust what's already arriving. Let November remind you of the simplest, most liberating truth: the art of letting go is not about loss, it's about remembering that you were never meant to carry it all in the first place. There is a moment in every Leo's story when the universe stops testing your endurance and begins applauding your persistence, and that moment is now. The archetype of Valencia, the spirit warrior, steps forward not as a fantasy but as a mirror. Imagine her bloodied sword in hand, eyes fierce with exhaustion yet undimmed by defeat, standing not because she feels strong but because surrender simply isn't in her vocabulary. That's you, Leo. You've fought invisible wars this past year against fatigue, against doubt, against the quiet fear that maybe you were asking too much from life. Yet here you are, still on your feet, still in the arena. Valencia's message is clear: hold your ground. The things you've been fighting for, self-respect, emotional clarity, a future that finally fits your magnitude, are not distant promises anymore, they're crossing the horizon. This is not the time to retreat into self-doubt or nostalgia. This is the moment to pull your metaphorical hair back, roll up your sleeves, and show the cosmos that you're not here to survive the game, you're here to master it. From a psychological point of view, this is the threshold effect, the point where fatigue and transformation coexist. Most people quit right before the shift happens, mistaking exhaustion for the end rather than the prelude. Valencia teaches you to recognize that difference. Every great leap forward is preceded by discomfort, the same way the body trembles before it rebuilds muscle. Ask yourself with brutal honesty, where have I underestimated myself? What can I do today, not tomorrow, to fortify my position emotionally, financially, and spiritually? And perhaps most importantly, in what ways have I already proven my resilience? These aren't rhetorical exercises. They are the self-awareness drills that turn survival instinct into self-mastery. Write them down. Reflect on them. The mind is an unreliable witness when memory is tangled with emotion, but the written word reveals patterns, and patterns reveal power. Then comes the arrival of the number 2828, a subtle cosmic wink disguised as mathematics. Numerology isn't fortune-telling, it's pattern recognition, and 2828 is the pattern of renewal through balance. The number 2 speaks of cooperation and duality, spirit meeting matter, while the 8 amplifies prosperity and infinity, the eternal return of what you've earned through energy, not luck. Together they whisper that every delay, every detour, every bruise on your ego was a form of calibration. The universe was never ignoring you, it was clearing the static so the signal could come through clean. You're no longer in the waiting room of your life. The receptionist just called your name. Now you step into the action. And because the universe has a sense of humor, it loves to send confirmation in the most absurd ways. You might see frogs, gray eyes in unexpected places, or even luxury logos, Chanel, Lamborghini, popping up like cosmic inside jokes. Don't dismiss them. Think of them as divine memes, reminders that prosperity isn't a sin but a reflection of alignment. When spirit and effort cooperate, abundance follows as naturally as sunrise follows night. Even the frog, that humble symbol of transformation, hops back in here to remind you that rebirth rarely looks glamorous while it's happening. It's muddy, awkward, and occasionally loud, but it's progress all the same. Now let's widen the lens. The Year of Triumph 2025 is not a slogan carved into celestial stone, it's a process built by discipline, faith, and audacity. Every frustration of 2024 was groundwork. The losses you mourned were not the universe being cruel but merciful. It cleared your garden of weeds so new roots could take hold. The trials stripped away illusion, leaving you with the raw material of your own greatness. And now, as the new year approaches, those buried seeds start to crack open. You can feel it, can't you? The subtle pulse of renewal beneath your ribs. This is the beginning of your personal renaissance. In mythic terms, you are the chosen one not because destiny picked you from a crowd, but because you finally chose yourself. The crown is not awarded by applause or validation, it is reclaimed through inner alignment. This November, the universe doesn't hand you a sword to attack others, it gives you one to cut through illusion, to slice away the fog of comparison, the chains of overthinking, the false humility that masks fear. When you look back months from now, you'll remember this period not as the time things magically got better, but as the moment you stopped resisting your own expansion. You trusted again. You believed again. You loved again. And in that act of surrender disguised as courage, life began to cooperate with you instead of testing you. From a societal angle, this is also a call to leadership. Leos are not meant to follow the crowd, they're meant to illuminate it. But leadership today isn't about domination, it's about presence. True authority radiates from those who have confronted their own shadows and still lead with compassion. In Buddhist philosophy, the fiercest warrior is the one who masters his mind. Valencia embodies that. Her sword may glisten with the residue of past battles, but her eyes are calm, her breath steady. That's the paradox of strength. You fight fiercest when you no longer need to prove anything. So here's your practical roadmap for the closing chapter of the year. Cleanse, both physically and emotionally. That doesn't mean booking an expensive retreat or subsisting on green juice, it means clearing your space, your schedule, and your mind of what drains your fire. Collaborate because no empire is built solo, and pride without partnership turns into loneliness. Use frustration as your paintbrush and heartbreak as your muse. The world doesn't need another flawless performance, it needs authentic art, the kind that bleeds a little truth. Confront fear, but do it with humor. When anxiety whispers, "What if you fail?" answer, "Then at least the show will be entertaining." Fear loses half its power when you start laughing at its script. And finally, celebrate. Every small victory counts. Every day you wake up and choose alignment over avoidance, clarity over chaos, that's progress. Remember, destiny doesn't whisper to Leos, it roars. The sound you hear now isn't the storm outside, it's your soul remembering how loud it can be when it stops apologizing for existing. This is not a chapter of survival but of reclamation. Your fire, your faith, your future, they're converging into something unstoppable. So take this as both a benediction and a dare, live boldly. Rest deeply. Speak truthfully. Let joy embarrass your old doubts. And if this message stirred something in you, share it. Let other hearts catch the flame. Like, comment, and subscribe to Golden Fortune Leo, because this community isn't just about predictions, it's about transformation. Here, we don't chase fate, we collaborate with it. So stay with us, Leo, as your story unfolds. The best part is not coming, it has already begun.